So there's a lot of news that came out of Magiccon Chicago earlier today that talks about previews for things coming up later this year, including the next upcoming set for Outlaws of Thunder Junction, as well as Modern Horizons 3, the Assassin's Creed Universes Beyond set, and the Bloomburrow set coming later this fall. So let's take a look and see what they preview, because there's a lot of stuff going around and I want to talk about all of it. So we're going to start with the Outlaws of Thunder Junction. Now, I have not actually read all these cards, so I'm going to read them along as I go on here and kind of give my opinions on some of these cards, see what you think. And there's also some art pieces we'll show off too. They don't have the cards revealed, but they have the art, so it kind of gives away the plot. Now, some of this stuff is things that I just said the other day I was not going to talk about because they were leaked. Well, now they are officially confirmed by Wizards of the Coast, so I'm going to go ahead and talk about them now. So let's take a look here first at Thibblethip Lost on the Range. For 1 blue, it's a 1/1 homunculus with Ward 2. You may look at the top card of your library at any time. The top card of your library has plot. The plot cost is equal to its mana cost. You may plot non-land cards from the top of your library. I'm not sure what plot is. I have not found any other information on it as I was researching up the cards that were shown off today. All I can tell right now is Wizards of the Coast is like, you're just going to have to guess and see what it is. So I'm not sure. I'm going to guess it's some kind of way to cast spells off the top of your deck if you do some kind of special condition. What that condition is, I have no idea. So we'll have to wait and see what that one does. Then here looks like a brand new X burn spell, Hell to Pay. X in a red sorcery. It deals X damage to target creature. Create a number of tapped treasure tokens equal to the amount of excess damage dealt to the creature this way. So you don't necessarily have to just do enough to kill a creature. If you really want those treasures, you can just dump all of the mana into it and burn it off the board and then get a bunch of treasures on top of that. So there's going to be some uses for that in the game, especially if you're in some kind of artifact-centric deck or a deck that cares about artifacts coming into play that use things like the Ingenious Artillerist and things like that, where like every time an artifact comes into play, you're going to deal extra damage. So not only could you actually burn away a creature, then get all these treasures coming in, then that damage could be then triggered off of those kind of cards to deal even more damage to your opponent's face. Then we have the first card that was part of the leaks that came out. We didn't know what the card did, but we knew the name of the card, and that is Oko the Ringleader, who is the leader of whatever gang is here on this plane of Thunder Junction. So let's take a look here. For 2, a blue and a green, you get Oko, a 3-starting loyalty planeswalker that says at the beginning of combat on your turn, Oko the Ringleader becomes a copy of up to 1 target creature you control until end of turn, except for it has hexproof. +1, draw 2 cards. If you've committed a crime this turn, discard a card, otherwise discard 2 cards. -1, create a 3/3 green elk creature token. Gotta have the elk joke in there somewhere, considering how messed up and broken the original version of this guy was. And then a -5 of, for each other non-land permanent you control, create a token that's a copy of that permanent. Now, that's pretty strong. We're already in green, so we have the ability to actually set this off a turn it drops using something like Doubling Season or anything that allows you to double the counters as it comes into play. So then you can just instantly ult it off because it would come into play with 6 counters on it if you had a Doubling Season down. Committing a crime. Now, I looked this up too after I was doing some stuff on this card. Basically, anything that you do to your opponent, target them with a burn spell, target their hand with a discard spell, target their creatures with removal, whatever, that is considered committing a crime against your opponent, and then that would actually meet the requirements for committing a crime to only discard 1 card off of this Oko versus discarding 2 cards. But sometimes you may not want that. You may want to discard 2 cards depending on the strategy you're using for, like, I don't know, Reanimator or something of that nature, or you're trying to do madness effects or things like that you want to discard more than 1 card. So you can kind of time this out if you do it the right way. Then we have the second member of his gang that actually has a card revealed. They've revealed the entire gang, but there's only a couple of different cards that are going to be revealed here today. This is Tiny Bones the Pickpocket. For a black, you get a 1/1 skeleton rogue with Death Touch, and whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can cast target non-land permanent card from that player's graveyard, and you can spend any mana of any type to cast the spell. So this is kind of an interesting card in that it's cheap, comes down, it's hard to deal with. If they don't want to lose their better creatures, they're going to have to let you hit, but then they can steal things. You can go ahead and steal stuff from their graveyard. So that's kind of a cool little effect. I like it though, so we'll see what he can do for us in our Commander, Historic Brawl, and our other singleton formats. Now, aside from the 2 cards that they previewed for the gang that's joining Oko, the other members of his gang are his kid, Kellen. We now know where he's at. They don't have a card for him preview, but it's Kellen the Kid in his arts here on the screen. We also have what happened to Vraska. She's still alive. With Vraska the Silencer in her art here, she's turned what looks to be a bar full of people into stone, and she's got these whips that kind of look like her hair used to look when she was a Phyrexian, so maybe that's what those are, is tendrils of her from when she was a Phyrexian. We also have Rakdos the Muscle. So Rakdos jumped into an Omen path and popped out here, and now he is a big bad brawling bruiser here on the plane of Thunder Junction. And then the last one of the gang here is Annie Flash the Veteran. Now, this is a brand new character that was created specifically for the set that has a little bit of a Native American tilt, and Wizards of the Coast was very adamant to point out the fact that this was built in consultation with somebody who hails from Native American heritage, and they wanted to make sure that they got this right without offending anybody. Then we actually have a new variant here. This is the wanted poster variants of the cards. They revealed the Oko and the Tiny Bones variants. I'm not going to go over the cards again, but this is the wanted poster for Oko the Ringleader, and this is the wanted poster for Tiny Bones the Pickpocket. Now, the art is kind of neat. It's kind of a almost like a cross-up of that style of, what do they use? On Ikoria, that was the set, where they had kind of almost an anime style almost, but then they kind of merged it over with these wanted poster overlays. So these are kind of cool. I kind of like them. We'll see what the other ones look like once they reveal all of them. They also revealed the new bonus sheet that's going to be here. These cards will appear at a rate of 1 per pack, and it's going to be kind of like the Mystical Archives and the Enchanting Tales and all those things that we've had in more recent sets. These are what they call the breaking news layout, where you get, it looks like an old school newspaper that's from like the Wild West, where they had the office, and they typed up everything on a typewriter and they shipped it out to the people. And this is a copy of Thoughtseize. Now, these are not legal in standard. They're only legal in the formats that they're currently legal in, unless they are printed into the main set or some other set in the near future. But you get to use these in the formats like Legacy and Vintage, and those. Use them in Commander. You name it, you can use it in those kind of formats. But these are kind of cool. I kind of like how they're laid up. They do evoke newspapers. I actually work for a newspaper in real life, so this is kind of cool. I kind of like that. Then they revealed the last little detail here so far, and this is where I talked about last week in a video where they said they canceled the epilogue boosters that were originally designed for this set. Well, this is where they come into play. There are rig up on the list slot along with the special guests. They're going to arrive in that. They are all mythics according to Aaron Forsyth from Wizards of the Coast, and they are like, they're supposed to represent items that are in the vault, which is what Oko's gang is after. So they're going to see special items that would have showed up in the vault as part of that epilogue booster, which was going to be originally called the Big Score. So now these are called the Vault, and that's what these cards are going to be on there. And the set symbol on these look like one of those giant bank vault doors with the spinning dial on. So this here is Sword of Wealth and Power for 3 colorless. It's an equipment +2/+2. And protections from instants and sorcery. So we've actually reached the phase where these swords do not actually do color protection anymore. We're doing other types of spell protections and stuff like that. So they're going to keep these rolling along. And then it has, whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, create a treasure token. When you cast your next instant or sorcery spell this turn, copy the spell, and you can choose new targets for the copy. And it equips for 2 like all the other swords. So we're going to have this, new cycles of swords, basically. There'll probably be one in the future with like protection from artifacts and enchantments. There'll probably be one for protection from creatures and planeswalkers, or something. There's going to be some kind of, set of swords that have those varying keywords set up for the protections, and then whatever the swords will actually do. So this is cool. I like it. I want to try this one out. And then this is the other card that they went ahead and put in here. It's called Nexus of Becoming. It's a 6 colorless artifact. At the beginning of combat on your turn, draw a card, and then you can exile an artifact or creature card from your hand. If you do, create a token copy of the exiled card, except for it's a 3/3 golem artifact creature, in addition to its other types. So you can actually, exile something from your hand and make a copy of it. Well, what's neat here is if you're doing that with like token doublers or anything like that, or token triplers in the case of O'Hare Talk, you can go ahead and create more than just that 1/3/3 or one copy of whatever you're pitching out there. So in my brain, I'm like, oh, let's go with like Vein Ripper or something like that from Murders at Karlov Manor. So you exile a Vein Ripper and you're playing green-black, so you have a doubling season on the board. All of a sudden you have 2 copies of these 3/3 vampire golems, because they keep their original creature type too, but then they also keep the other abilities of the Vein Ripper too. So it's a flying, it has ward of sacrifice a creature, they lose 2 life, so every time a creature dies, somebody's got to lose 4 life to those Vein Rippers. And if you can multiply those tokens out, you can cause some really nasty effects with things that one of my cardinal rules in Singleton is if you can figure out a way to copy something and make multiples of something exist, that is a really good way to win a game. And this is highly abusable and highly able to do that kind of thing. Then moving on to Modern Horizons 3, they've announced that the allied colored fetch lands are going to be in this version of the Horizon set. So last time we had the enemy color pairings, this time we have the allied color pairings. So we're going to have things like the Bloodstained Mire here on the screen, where these right now, these are going for about, I don't know, 40, 50 bucks plus. So these are probably going to come down eventually. And if Modern Horizons 3 sells as good as Horizons 2 did, then these cards are going to drop down probably around the $20-ish mark for the more popular ones, and then the less popular ones, probably like the Windswept Heath and stuff like that, they'll probably be closer towards that $12 mark, where the lesser enemy pains or enemy fetches are currently sitting at. They've also revealed the new version of their free spells that are coming out. Now, instead of, taking something out of your hand and exiling it to get the free effect like they've done with several spells in the last few Horizon sets, which got them in a lot of trouble and got Fury banned here recently, we have a new version of this where you actually have to sacrifice a very specific colored creature to get the spell for free. This is Flare of Cultivation for 1 green. It's a sorcery that says you can sacrifice a non-token green creature rather than pay the spell's mana cost, and then you can search your library for 2 basic land cards, reveal those cards, put 1 in your hand and 1 onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. So this actually is Cultivate, like you would normally see it, but instead of being 2 in a green, it's 1 green, but then you have the alternate option to sacrifice a green creature in order to cast a spell for free. So it's a more balanced approach. You have to give up something and you've already paid for it because it's on the board in order to get this for free. So this is going to probably be a lot better way to template this kind of thing for Modern. And of course, this will see play in Commander and God knows where else, because it's it's a Cultivate, it's a mana accelerant. People play these things all the time, and this frankly is a better Cultivate in a lot of cases, unless you're in like a 5-color deck where double green's a lot harder to come up with. This is going to be better 9 times out of 10. And in case you missed the key art reveals that they did a few months ago, the Eldrazi are back, and Emrakul looks like she's come out of the moon here. This is Emrakul, the World Anew, for 12 colorless. It's a 12/12 Eldrazi that when you cast a spell, gain control of all creatures target player controls. It has flying, protection from spells, that means all spells, not just instants or sorceries, and from permanents that were cast this turn. So when it leaves the battlefield, then you sacrifice all creatures you control, and it has a madness cost of 6 colorless. Now, this is not just any 6. It has to be specifically the type of colorless that the devoid mana that they came up with back in the Oath of the Gatewatch set and those things. You have to have that mana to pay into this. So like Sol Ring will give you 2 of this mana. Some lands will actually, like if they produce a colorless, they actually usually produce this kind of mana. That's the mana that you need, and you need 6 of them to use this for a madness cost, which means you discard it, and then you can cast it for the 6 colorless mana. This is kind of a cool card. I like how it's set up, where it's not going to punish your opponent so bad that if this thing dies, that you're not going to keep their stuff. But this effect does not end at the end of turn. You steal that person's stuff, and it's yours until Emrakul leaves the board. And then it's protection from spells and from permanents that were cast this turn. So it's got protection from spells, which like I think the way it's templated is it's always protected from spells. So there's no spell removal that's going to touch this thing. And it's protected from a permanent that was cast this turn. So anything that has like an ETB trigger, then that could like exile like a Banishing Light or Imprisoned in the Moon, ironically here, those things aren't going to be able to exile her because they're going to come into play. The trigger's going to go off, but then she's protected from those permanents the turn that they were cast. So it's going to be very difficult to get rid of this thing. You're going to have a board wipe or a board exile type effect to get this off the board and get it out of your hair. And being that it's a 12/12 is really good, but they took away her trample and her flying that she had in all of her prior incarnations. So you can stick a 1/1 in front of this and it can just be like, oops, speed bump. So yeah, not that big a deal to just keep putting stuff in front of it. But if you're the one on the receiving end of losing all your creatures, that's a bigger problem. But in a multiplayer game, that's not as big a deal other than the person who had their stuff stolen. We also have an Eldrazi, a little Eldrazi to go with our big one here that makes the big ones cheaper. It's called It That Heralds the End for 1 and I guess I'm going to call this a devoid colorless. It's a 2/2 Eldrazi drone. It says colorless spells you cast with mana value 7 or greater cost 1 less to cast, and other colorless creatures you control get +1/+1. So you could, in theory, use this with colorless artifact creatures and give them a bonus as well, but this is clearly meant to be an Eldrazi thing in a colorless Eldrazi deck. So, if you're going to be using that kind of thing, now, of course, modern Eldrazi, they have Eldrazi decks that have been running around for a long time. We had that Zuladoc deck that came out with the Commander Master set last year, so this would slot in with this pretty well. So this is going to see quite a bit of play, and it's an uncommon, so it shouldn't be that hard to get your hands on a copy of. And then it would appear we actually have a series of flip walkers coming in for ones that didn't actually have a creature variant from like the Magic Origins set where they started out with like, okay, this is what this character was before they came a Planeswalker. And then they flip over to the other side. Well, this is now Ajani's turn to get his card. This is Ajani Nakatl Pariah for 1 and a white. You get a 1/2 cat warrior that when it enters, you create a 2/1 cat warrior token. And then when one or more cats you control die, you can exile Ajani and then bring it back transformed under its owner's control. And it flips over into Ajani Nakatl Avenger, which is a 3 starting loyalty Ajani Planeswalker. +2, put a +1/+1 counter on each cat you control. So there must be a cat theme in the Modern Horizons set for this to kind of work into. Then it has a 0, create a 2/1 cat warrior token. When you do, if you control a red permanent other than this, he deals damage equal to the number of creatures you control to any target. So as long as you have another red creature on the board or a red enchantment on the board or even a red piece of equipment or something like that, you can pay 0, put a cat warrior on the board, and then blast any target equal to the number of creatures you control. That's pretty strong. And then -4, each opponent chooses an artifact, a creature, enchantment, and a planeswalker from among the non-land permanents they control and sacrifices everything else. So it's kind of like the whole deal. It's Cataclysm is what it is. They pick, one of each of everything, except for this one actually has planeswalkers built into it, which planeswalkers didn't exist when the original card of Cataclysm was printed. And now you get that option of, -4, blow up the world. And you can do that with 1 plussing on this. 1+ puts him to 5, and then next turn you can -4 and nuke everything. So if you need to nuke everything, that's the thing though. There's a push and pull to this card. If you're putting counters on your cats, you're not really wanting to blow up the world, but at the same time, you may need to do that just to survive. So you got to weigh out that, okay, I need to have more creatures on the board. I need to have counters on them to make them bigger, but then I might need to blow up everything. And of course, this would be the planeswalker that you would want to save in most cases, unless the minus is going to kill it anyways, and you have another planeswalker. This is the one you're going to save. So pretty strong. Red white, red white's kind of weak in Commander and Historic Brawl, but we'll see. Oh, that just reminds me. Bear in mind, Modern Horizons 3 is coming to Arena, so these will be used in Historic Brawl. The last couple things from their Modern Horizons previews is reprints of a couple of cards that have not been introduced to the Modern format. We've seen them, we've been using them in Singleton formats, but I wanted to talk about them anyways. First up is Priest of Titania, 1 in a green. It taps to add a green for each elf on the battlefield, and it's a 1/1. It's never been printed into Modern. It's only been in Legacy format because it was originally printed in the Urza Saga set, which is why the gears are in the background of the card. And then now it's coming to the Modern format. And then it also makes it a little bit easier to get our hands on in Commander, because right now I think it's about a $4 or $5 card. So this should cheapen it up a little bit, but they did upshift the rarity, I noticed just now on it, from common to uncommon. And then the other card they're going to introduce to Modern here is Layla the Blade Reforged. Now, Commander players know this. This was in one of the precons. I think it was the one from Strixhaven. For 2 and a red, you get a legendary creature Spirit Warrior with haste that whenever Layla the Blade Reforged attacks, exile the top card of your library and you can play the card this turn. Whenever one or more cards are put into exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a counter on Layla. Now, this, if I know a little bit about anything about Modern, is going to see play in Cascade decks, because the way Cascade works, and I've seen this on the Arena client, is when you Cascade, each card that gets exiled for the Cascade actually counts towards Layla's trigger. So it's going to be like 1, oh, trigger, 1, oh, trigger. And it's going to do that over and over again until it hits the thing that you're going to Cascade into. And then for every card that got exiled before you hit that Cascade trigger, Layla's going to go ahead and give you a +1/+1 counter on her. So that's pretty freaking nuts for the format that is basically using and abusing Cascade right now with Crashing Footballs and Living End. Next up is the Universes Beyond Assassin's Creed previews that they've put out now. I didn't have a lot of interest in the Fallout stuff. I never played Fallout, but this I have interest in because I played a lot of Assassin's Creed years ago. So let's start off with the guy that kicked off the entire franchise as the first assassin they introduced us to, Altair ibn Ahad, for a red, white, and a black. So he's a Mardu assassin. He's a 3/3 with first strike that whenever it attacks, exile up to 1 target assassin creature from your graveyard with a memory counter on it. Not sure what memory counters are. Then for each creature card you own in exile with a memory counter on it, create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of it. Exile those tokens at the end of combat. So it seems like they're playing off of the whole memories and the animus type thing that was in the Assassin's Creed games. And since your stuff is dying, you're going to want to actually have like an Assassin's Matter deck here, because you're going to exile an assassin out of your graveyard and then make a copy of it here on the board, and it's going to be tapped and attacking, and then you exile the tokens. The neat thing here though is those build up with those counters on them. It kind of reminds me of Marsil the Pretender with his cage counters, where he could copy spells, but in this case you're putting memory counters on those creatures that you're exiling, and then every time Altair here actually attacks, you're going to go ahead and make a copy of it on the board and then keep going through. Now, if they're non-legendary and you have a way of making multiple copies of those tokens, because we're in white, so Anointed Procession, O'Hare Talk, Mondrak, those things can actually copy multiple assassin cards and make copies of them. Sorry, I just smacked my mic with my fingertip. And it will actually make multiples of it as long as it's not legendary. That's pretty strong. I kind of like this. I can't wait to give this one a try. Then next up is a early version of Ezio. Now, they're doing exactly what I wanted them to do with this set. I wanted copies of the creatures in the set to represent early versions of themselves, because it was a bit of a journey with some of these characters. So like with Ezio, he was actually, this reckless fool at first who just wanted vengeance for his family dying. And then he built himself up into becoming the leader of the Assassin's Guild. And it was so cool to see. And so now they are actually representing that in the form of an early version of him as Ezio Blade of Vengeance for 3, a blue and a black. He's a 5/5 with Death Touch that whenever an assassin you control deals combat damage to your player, draw a card. So this works really well with the new Atrada that just came out, because it's in the same colors. So you can actually slot her in with him. So that's kind of cool. Or you can slot it with the other version they've revealed of Ezio Auditore da Firenze. For 1 and a black, it's a 3/2 human assassin with menace that says assassin spells you have free running of black. It says you may cast a spell for its free running cost if you dealt combat damage to a player this turn with an assassin or a commander. So you don't necessarily have to have a commander, or have him as the front facing commander. You can just have a different commander, but in the case of this one, it has to be a 5-color commander because this is technically a 5-color card because of the cost that's in the second part here. Whenever Ezio deals combat damage to a player, you can pay Wooburg, 1 of each color, and if that player has 10 or less life, if you do, you make them lose the game. So essentially, the flavor here is if they're at 10 or less, you hit them with Ezio and you pay the 5 colors, you assassinate them on the spot, which is perfectly flavored. I love that. So that's kind of cool. Then we're going to move on to an assassin that came in the much later games. I believe this one is from Valhalla. This is Ivor Battle Ready for 3, a red and a white. You get a 5/5 with vigilance and haste that says when it attacks, it deals damage equal to the number of equipment you control to each opponent. So mildly disappointing that we have another Boros commander that actually only really cares about equipment being on the board to do its thing. Otherwise, it's just a 5/5 with vigilance and haste for 5, which is very blah, to be perfectly honest. I'm not feeling this particular commander all that well, but we'll see if it has any uses once it comes out. Then we have an ally that came in Assassin's Creed Origins. It's Cleopatra Exiled Pharaoh for 2, a black and a green. You get a 2/4 human noble, and it has 2 abilities. Allies, at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 other legendary creatures you control. Actually, it's not even you control, it's just 2 legendary creatures, so you can put them on your opponent's creatures as well. And Betrayal, whenever a legendary creature with counters on it dies, draw a card for each counter on it, you lose 2 life. So you can actually put counters on your opponent's stuff or on your stuff, but when they die, you're going to lose 2 life, and then you're going to draw a card for each of them dying. That's pretty good. So you get the cards actually for each counter on it, and then you lose 2 life. So that's actually pretty strong. So you can hit up their commanders, you can hit up their legends that are in their decks, you can hit up your own stuff. Like, you can set this up in a way where you're going to be drawing a ton of cards if you or anybody else wipes at the right time, and you only need a couple times of this actually triggering to get a ton of cards. I mean, you can get at least 2 cards off of this just for the first time you hit an end step. As long as somebody doesn't have instant speed removal, you're going to get cards off of this. So that's pretty strong. And we couldn't have an Assassin's Creed game without a piece of equipment for the Hidden Blade, which is kind of the trademark of the entire series. For 2 colorless, you get an artifact equipment with flash, so you can do it at instant speed. And when it enters the battlefield, attach it to target creature you control. If the creature was an assassin, it gains death touch until end of turn. Very appropriate. And the equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has first strike. So that means if you flash this in and attach it to an assassin, it has first strike and death touch, and it just goes boop and pops them, and it'll kill whatever blocked it without ever letting the assassin ever come close to being killed by the creature. So that's a cool little surprise. I kind of like that. Very, very flavorful. Then we have the Animus, which is the device where they stick these descendants of these past assassins into, and they read their memories to try and figure out the stuff in the game. It's 2 colorless legendary artifact. At the beginning of your end step, exile up to 1 target legendary creature from a graveyard with a memory counter on it. So there's the memory counters again, just like we had with Altair earlier. So you could combine this with Altair because he just looks for things with memory counters on it. It has tap until your next turn. Target legendary creature you control becomes a copy of target creature in exile with a memory counter on it. Activate only as a sorcery. So you can actually do this, set it up where you're exiling stuff with both Altair and this, and you can have access to any of this stuff. But this one's cool because it actually turns your other target legendary creatures into something else that was already removed from the graveyard. So if Altair is exiling legendary assassins from your graveyard, then you can start turning your other legends in the deck into that one, to end a turn type thing. That's kind of cool. I like that. Good, interesting flavor because you're overlaying the memories onto the creature to make it remember itself being that creature. That's I'm seeing some good flavor wins, at least out of this set coming in. Then we actually have a real historical figure that was featured in the, I think it was Assassin's Creed 2 and Revelations and Brotherhood games. Leonardo da Vinci for 2 and a blue. You get a 3/3 human artificer. It has 3 blue. Until end of turn, Thopters you control have a base power and toughness of XX, where X is the number of cards in your hand. And then 2 and a blue, tap, draw a card, then discard a card. If the discarded card was an artifact card, exile it from your graveyard. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, except for it's a 0/2 Thopter artifact creature with flying in addition to its other types. So you can actually, you generate its own Thopters with its tap ability. There's plenty of other ways to make Thopters like Psy Master Thopterist and things like that, Rhea Ethereum Shaper, those kind of cards. And then you can actually use this to bulk them up and make Thopters Matter, Thopter Kindred, however you want to call it, and smash face. This is kind of cool, and I like that they included Da Vinci because he was a heavy part in those earlier games, giving you things. And like one of Da Vinci's early actual drawings was what they based like a lot of flying machines off of originally, and like the Ornithopters would have been something that was very similar to that from Magic that they got the idea from. So this is kind of cool that it's kind of coming full circle from the Ornithopter in the original alpha beta sets and whatnot, all the way down now to the guy who basically inspired people to kind of create these kind of things. And then the last card that they revealed today is Haystack. These are, ubiquitous in the Assassin's Creed games. You jump off a building, land in them, where you jump and run in there and fall into them to, hide from guards and all kinds of stuff, which is what's being depicted here. Is you're hiding from this guard, the guard's looking around, looking for you, and he's hidden. For 1 and a white, you pay 2 taps, target creature you control faces out. So you just disappear from the game and they can't find you. Well, same thing here, but it's an on-demand phasing for a protection of a creature, which I absolutely love, because then you're just like, go ahead, try to remove my stuff. Oop, nope, it's not there anymore. And it's just phased out. And it doesn't matter what kind of removal they try to do. Unless that removal has split second, they can't do anything about you using this to just phase it out of the game. So that's cool. And last but certainly not least, we have the Bloomburrow stuff that they put out. This is coming out, I think in September, I think is when this is coming out. And that's also when we're going to have the actual standard rotation. So the cards from the Kamigawa and New Capenna and those things are going to rotate out. So then starting with Dominaria United forward is the ones that are going to be in standard. And then we'll have access to these things for our new stuff coming in. So first up here, we have Mabel, Heir to Cragflame for 1, a red and a white. It's a 3/3 mouse soldier. Having trouble talking. It's getting late. Other mice you control get +1/+1, and when it enters the battlefield, create a Cragflame, a legendary colorless equipment artifact token with equipped creature gets +1/+1, has vigilance, trample, haste, and it equips for 2. So one thing that somebody pointed out on Twitter, they took off the enters the battlefield part of it. It just says enters. Now, I don't know if that's because this was so crammed with words that they just chopped it off, but it would appear that they might be dropping the enters the battlefield part off of this. So the battlefield, because really the only thing that enters is entering the battlefield. There's not any kind of other effects that uses that wording. So if they do this, I'm okay with it. It's a clean way of doing it. As for the card itself, I think it's a great card. If there's enough mice in the game that we could actually do anything with, the thing I'm worried about is I don't know that there's a ton of mice other than 3 blind mice from Wilds of Eldraine and a few other things that generate mouse tokens, however you want to call it. I don't know how well that's going to work out. Now, there might be a bunch of them coming in the Bloomburrow set, and that might make up the difference. I'm not sure. There might even be an errata coming for certain things. Again, not sure. But mostly for rodents, they've done rats, and they've always been in black. So maybe the mice are going to be in the white and red scheme, and that's where this is going to come into. As for the equipment, +1/+1 vigilance, trample, and haste, that's a ton of keywords. There's some things that would love to get their hands on that, just to have that keyword soup attached to them. So that's a good card. I think that's going to see a lot of play. Then we have a new mono green card. I don't know if I'd use this as a commander, but I would love to see it in my Titania deck, and that is Lumra, Bellow of the Woods. For 4 green, it's an elemental bear, star, Power and toughness equal to the number of lands you control with vigilance and reach. And when it enters, mill 4, then return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That's why I would love this in the Titania Protector of Argoth deck that I have, because it's designed to sacrifice lands, put them in the graveyard, and bring them back later. Well, this would bring back everything in one big burst and be able to go ahead and smash, those things back onto the board, along with creating the elementals and things like that. So I'm looking forward to getting my hands on a copy of this one. Then we have what could possibly be one of the most adorable cards I've seen in a while, Bria Riptide Rogue. For 2, a blue and a red. It's a 3/3 otter rogue with prowess. I'm already there. I love prowess. If other creatures you control have prowess. Whoa, hello. And it says, whenever you cast a non-creature spell, target creature you control can't be blocked this turn. Holy, I didn't even read this card yet. Dang, that is strong. So you're casting, combat abilities and things like that. Any kind of artifacts, enchantments, planeswalkers, whatever, will trigger the prowess effects. On top of that, for every spell you cast, a target creature can't be blocked, and it's growing in size as you do it. I want to play this beside of the Narset that came in the Aftermath set, because she grants prowess to your creatures too. So you could have multiple instances of prowess stacking up on your... Oh my God. This could be really stupid. I'm so trying that deck out. Then we have the last card of the video. I know it's been going long, but they revealed a ton of stuff today. And that is Burke, Longear of the Law. For 4, a green and a white. You get a 4/4 rabbit soldier with vigilance that when it enters the battlefield, you put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. And whenever a creature you control with a counter on it attacks, double the counters on it. Well, we're in Selesnya colors, and it's a commander that will care about your +1/+1 counters. That's pretty good in and of itself. But the fact that it doubles counters, that could get out of control really quick. And it doesn't matter about him. He can sit back and not attack if you don't want to keep him safe. It matters that the creatures with the counters on them attack, and then they get doubled. So this is kind of freaking cool. And you can just go, whoop, 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 it just keeps going up and doubling. And then you stack that up with a counter doubler like Branching Evolution or something like that. So it's like you'll double it, and then you're actually putting counters on there. So then you double it again because of the enchantment that's going on as well. So that's really freaking strong. So that's what I have for you guys this morning. I was working on this late tonight. I didn't get to these previews until later at night. I'm impressed with some of the stuff that's coming. I'm very excited for the Assassin's Creed set, if you couldn't tell by the way I was talking about the cards. I kind of love the stuff going on with Outlaws of Thunder Junction. It's kind of veering a little too much to the goofy side for me on some things with the whole plot and stuff like that. But we'll see what plot does once they actually reveal what the ability actually does. The committing a crime thing is kind of an interesting way to put it, that you're messing with your opponent. But all in all, I'm impressed with what I'm seeing so far. Let's see what else they got for us. And until next time, please, if you like this video, please go ahead and like, comment, subscribe. All those good things help the channel grow. And as always, thank you for watching and have a great day.